recently, I've been trying to slow down more and start creating for myself again. You see, for a couple months, I got super sucked into making the work that got me money and focusing on that and traveling, and it's awesome and I love it, but it's fast paced and there's always a deadline and there's always a time limit to how much you can put into it before you have to deliver it. And lately I've been trying to focus more on creating for myself again, and just going down to the river and taking spontaneous trips to the river, the mountains, to go capture landscape videos and photos, and maybe some wildlife photos and videos. And so this past weekend, me and my dad took a trip up to the mountains in Utah for a day, and that's just what we did. This trip up in the mountains with my dad didn't necessarily have any specific agenda or goal in mind. I had one small goal I would like to achieve, but it wasn't necessary. I would have liked to have captured some fall colors and maybe get some beautiful mountain landscapes behind them. And up where we were going, I hadn't been for about 2 years, but I knew there was also some moose and deer quite often up in that area, and pretty much all mountain wildlife you could imagine. So the goal was to simply go up for a day, enjoy the time with my dad that I rarely get to spend with him now, and go see some beautiful landscapes, whether the leaves were turning or not. But we were pretty sure those leaves were going to be perfect. As we started to make it into the forest from the desert floor, we instantly started to see those fall colors showing in the trees around on the road. And right as we got into the forest, it was popping with color. I immediately jumped out of the car, the camera on the gimbal, and got some pictures of some beautiful trees creating a nice canopy around the road as we drove up through. After I got my shots at the first spot, some cool pictures and videos of the trees and the canopy it was creating over the road, we slowly kept creeping up the road. The lighting was perfect, some pop-up storms and some overcast skies, and just a little bit, but just the right amount of sun peeking through to create a nice, moody, perfect lit scene. As we kept creeping up the road, we'd stop occasionally and take in all those fall colors that were popping. As we got closer to our first destination up at the top, a beautiful lake, we stopped right before we turned onto the road to head up there because I had seen a moose. Unfortunately, we got out and I got the big lens on, but I wasn't able to capture it before it slipped into the trees and eluded us. But I was able to capture some cool shots of all the trees and some mountainous landscape behind it from the same spot. As we made it up to the top of the mountain, some pop-up storms were hitting right up there and didn't really let up. So it was raining the whole time we were up there on and off, but it was a beautiful scene. The lighting wasn't perfect and the pictures weren't great, but it was more about the memories and the feeling of being up there. The cool air, some cool rain dropping on you, and the beautiful colors up there. Although there wasn't very many colors popping up there, it was mostly just green pine trees. It was still incredible to take in that landscape again after not being able to make it up there for around 2 years. As we were making our way along the lake, we headed over to the lodge area where there's some cabins you can rent and over to the main lodge. The rain started really coming down, and right as we were about to head back to the truck, they opened up the lodge, and so we made our way in, and me and my dad grabbed some coffee, sat at a table in there, and talked to one of the owners about their stories of opening the place up and all the wildlife and crazy stuff that goes around up there. After grabbing some coffee and chilling out and letting the rain settle down for a little bit, we made our way back out to the lake, and we were able to go down to the dock. I wanted to get some cool pictures of the dock and just frame it up nicely. As we were making our way down the dock, we saw 2 moose across the lake in the water, foraging around, drinking water, doing whatever those moose do in the water. so I instantly had to throw on this 200 to 600 millimeter instead of the 24 to 70 to try to capture some of these moose. I snapped off a few shots, but they were pretty far away even with the 200 to 600 millimeter, and I knew these shots wouldn't be perfect, but it would be cool to have a little bit of a wider shot with them and some pine trees and cool colors as the bushes around them were starting to turn a little bit yellow. So we got those shots, and we decided that we we're going to try to make our way over to the side of the lake they were on and get some closer shots of them. As we maneuvered over there, I caught them through the trees, and we ended up pretty close, and we ended up spooking them a little bit. Luckily, we think these moose are pretty used to humans up there with how many campers and people visit the lake year-round. So we decided to shoot up a little farther than them and try to go up to where they had kind of moved off to. I didn't want to bother these moose too much. I like to capture wildlife naturally, and I don't want to push these guys or mess with them too much. It's wildlife. I want to capture them in their habitat, and I don't want to pressure them too much. I was able to snap off a few pictures of them as they moved through the trees and forage, but it was just bits and pieces and little glimpses of them. So we decided to move around to the top over onto the road to try to get a clear shot of them as they were moving up further towards the road. On the way up towards the road, I was able to snap off a few pictures of some other little wildlife friends, a squirrel and a chipmunk, as we were going up there. When we got up to the road, the moose were moving right up towards there, and they were really close. I was able to get some really cool shots of one of the moose. Even though they were smaller guys, moose are still incredible animals. It's wild to just see them moving around and how large they are, and snap off a few really cool pictures. After this close moose encounters and some cool pictures, I decided I want to go back to the dock since I hadn't got any wide landscape shots of it, and take some shots of the dock next to the lake. And then we decided our trip up to the top was just pretty much well and completed, with some coffee, rain, some cool landscape shots, and some cool wildlife encounters. So we decided to hop in the truck and head back down towards the next location, which was another lake that I assumed would have some pretty crazy color going on with all the trees. And hopefully, in my head, this would turn out to be some of the best shots of the trip. On the way down to the next location, to the lake, we took a wrong turn thinking it might be the entrance to the lake, but since we hadn't been up there in a minute, it wasn't. We were still quite a ways from it. But we decided it was a happy accident and decided to keep going down the road. And to our surprise, there was crazy amounts of cool trees and color going on, and so I hopped out and was able to grab a few more cool shots, including some with a puddle. Unfortunately, the puddle shots didn't turn out exactly great because it was a smaller puddle, but I still think they turned out relatively cool. When we got to the next location at the lake, we parked at the top of the boat ramp, and right off the road next to the boat ramp, there were some cool trees that kind of curved around the road headed into the boat ramp, and it was a lot of yellow and orange going on, so I decided to get some videos and photos. The lighting wasn't perfect, but it still looked pretty cool, and then I decided to move on and go down to the lake. Unfortunately, when I headed down to the lake was not very full at all. It was actually very low. So it wasn't going to provide a crazy cool landscape shot with a full lake and maybe reflecting some of those beautiful colors going around in the trees next to the lake. I still shot some photos and tried to do the best I could, because when you're out there and you're just shooting for fun, no goal in mind, your eye is kind of wandering and looking for just cool things and cool ways to even make the worst of a situation kind of into a cool memory or a cool photo. The photos from this spot didn't turn out exactly how I had imagined them just because the water wasn't full, but there were still a few cool shots, but definitely not the best of the day. After turning around from the lake, that pretty much concluded our day. We started to head down back towards home. The lighting was starting to get a little worse because the clouds and the storms had kept rolling in, and there wasn't much light to work with. But this trip wasn't about grabbing the perfect shots or the craziest content or really any of the content side at all. I wanted to capture some fall colors and just get out and have fun and just not think about deadlines and crazy work. I just wanted to get out and have some fun. And the parts I'll remember most is just spending the time up with my dad and being able to take in all that beauty of the mountains and the landscape and all the wildlife up there. And I'll have the photos and videos as a memory and something to tell the story. But it wasn't about the perfect shots or anything. It was just about the time spent out there and having fun.